Three, two, one. Hi there, my name is Karen Burgoyne, and I'm the founder and director of my own business, K-Talk. I'm coming to you from Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And today I'm going to be presenting to you on autism and mental health, how different individuals are impacted. Now, this is coming from my perspective and my story, no one else. Let's get on with the presentation. The topics of discussion in this presentation today are an introduction of myself, autism and the black hole, living in the past, other situations that impact mental health, trauma. Trauma can play major havoc on your mental health. And then I'll be sharing my contact details with you. So I was diagnosed at the age of 30 with what was known back then in the late 90s with Asperger's syndrome. Now, under the DSM-5 diagnosis in America, they decided to put this label of Asperger's syndrome and separate high-functioning autism and put it together under the one umbrella. So now I'm diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder, but I'm very high-functioning. Prior to that, nothing was known back in the 70s, 80s when I was young. I went around not knowing what I had, but I also struggled to understand how I hurt other people. It didn't make sense because I was saying things unintentionally that I didn't intend to say. But I couldn't put those words right in my mind and in my mouth, and I hurt other people. The diagnosis also helped me to understand why I behaved the way I did. I tried to repair those relationships with people, but they remembered what I did, so I couldn't go back to being friends with them anymore, which was sometimes very sad for me. But the lack of expectations and acceptance on me wasn't fair. I was always the problem that was always in the too hard basket, that nobody wanted to have around or anything to do with in the long run or long term. Back in the early days, I lived in one of these. This was my mind, a black hole. I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. This was my mind as a child teenager till I was diagnosed with my condition later as an adult. I was about to smash this glass coffin I lived in as well. I liked being secure in that glass coffin and looking at other people socializing and having coffees and being out and about and enjoying themselves in life. But I could never do that until my diagnosis. That glass coffin was smashed into thousands upon millions of pieces. I broke out of that glass coffin and did my life journey just straight after my diagnosis. And I was so very glad that I did. But I was really sad and depressed, and I didn't know why, as I'd never had any friends to go over to their place and play on weekends, because I didn't know how to have friends or be a friend to anyone. Now I've got a great big friendship network all over the place. Some days, or sometimes, I'd stay in bed the whole weekend before I went back to primary school on Monday. I was always dreaming that one day I would be able to go out and make friends, enjoy a meal with others, have a coffee down the street, drive a car, and see the world in a totally different perspective in the future. Whenever we went out as a family and I'd gone to bed to sleep that night, I'd be processing the day's events, going over it like a video recorder. Even though I never knew about autism or was diagnosed at that stage of my life as a child or teenager. Now you probably remember these machines from the olden days. I was so fascinated with it, extremely fascinated with this kind of stuff. I could always put people's TVs and videos together as I had a technical ability. But I'd never used that ability. because I was used up for connecting people's TVs and videos and didn't even need a manual to work things out. I just connected this one with that one and boom, it was working. Now I do sound and live streaming production at my local church. Living in the past. My mental health was very deeply and gravely affected by the way I lived in my past. Different scenarios and different situations. It was scary. I used to live in my past all the time. It wasn't helpful for me to do that at all. You can't change it for the better, can you? The past can never be changed at all. So I've got some quotes here that I'm going to talk to you about. Stop looking in the rearview mirror. Look forward when you're driving. Look forward on the road. That's always a very helpful tip. The past is a place of reference, not a place of residence. If you are living in the past or in the future, you will never find a meaning in the present. That's from Fasto Sercinani. The past is good to learn from, but not to live in. Every moment you live in the past is a moment you waste in the present. Many people don't live in the moment because they're consumed with their past or focus on a future that doesn't exist. They miss out on so many joy-filled experiences in the reality of the present. Learn from your past, plan for your future, but you can only live life to the fullest right now. To live in the past robs the present of so much precious time. But how could I break the prisoner chains and begin new freedoms outside of this? One people in particular basically killed me in the past, from school to adult life, from continuous harassment to continuously pestering me in life wherever she could, in my local community where I lived. It all started when her and I attended the same high school together, as well as being a dance or calisthenic club that she had joined after my being there for a number of years. Whenever I was out, whether it was driving round and round on a roundabout with her mother in the front seat of her car, whenever I'd appear in my car, she would laugh at me. Even when I was down this local shopping centre, she was there laughing at me and harassing me. Because I have sensory issues, I was trying on a pair of fit-over sunglasses in Kmart, which is a big department store over here. When I turned around and looked at her, she didn't understand why I had so many high sensory needs. I just quickly left the store and then she laughed at me. But that was just one bit of humiliation she gave me. When she was out walking the dog with her mother, and she would deliberately come up my street where I lived, her mother and her would disappear around the corner with the family dog. But she would stay on the opposite side of the street, just staring at my place where I lived at the time, until the time it was decided that she would go on towards her own house back then. When I came out one day on a Saturday morning, I was still in my pajamas and told her off. She then still laughed at me till I told her I was going to the police that day to get her charged with harassment. That stopped things for a while until a family member was staying with us and working in the police force at the time, and they had their car parked in the driveway, a police vehicle. I told them about this previous situation, and then they went out and pretended to find something, dressed in full uniform because they were working at the academy to do a few things over here, till they came to her. So they were pretending to look for clues. This woman from my old school days. So this family member had a chat to this woman who was staring at me on this Saturday morning. And then she probably had a chat to her about things. This woman had caused me nothing over my lifetime, nothing but stress, anxieties, and trauma that I somehow couldn't get away from till a change in this situation. That I'm going to explain to you in the next few slides of this video. But that family member told this woman that she was going to take her to the local police station and have her charged with harassment and bullying and other things. And she was going to put her in the back of the paddy wagon or police car and showed her Freddie, her identification, and that stopped the trick. That did the trick that day. She never did that again, as I explained here. That did the trick. She stopped that altogether, which I was very glad about. But I was a school crossing supervisor or a lollipop at the lady at the time. One day I got her back and I felt liberated, absolutely liberated and empowered. But it was as if time stood still for that moment, and I put her back in her place finally where she belonged. Or I put her. I then had to do what I had to do and yell out to her across the street and tell her what she'd had, water on the brain, and she stopped dead in her tracks. But I never told anyone about her problem at all to anyone. But she'd very much learned her lesson that day of stepping behind the yellow line again, stepping behind the boundary line. Sheer relief came to me one day when her mother put the family home on the market for sale and they moved away from the area. I was jumping up and down for joy. Not only that, I was so happy, like I celebrated. But not only that as well, when I also had my own house built and finalised in another suburb, it was our turn to move away from the area. I was completely overjoyed at the prospect of living in another area where I wouldn't even see or hear from her anymore. She's a creep in her own right. Needless to say, should she be near me or in my presence, I would just ignore her or them anyway. They're not worth it for the trouble that they cause you in life for you. But this is only one moment of trauma that I've suffered in my own lifetime. Someone else's cruel remarks and actions against you can have a profound impact on your mental health, like having a ripple effect, like waves on the beach, but even worse, like a tidal wave even. But this is how something in life can affect your mental health overall from your past experiences. Some people don't even have that ability to move on from those situations at all. They stay in the same thing, in the same past all the time. Some people who are strong-willed, resilient, and exceptionally determined, like myself, can do so and have had the ability to do so. Other situations that affect mental health. One-sided relationships. Autism relationships that are one-sided are not a two-way street because they are greatly taken advantage of or used by the other person in their life at the time that they think they're a friend to. The way the individual person is, whether they have specific interests that stand out from their peers in the community, or whether they need to navigate challenges and complexities of their disorder. Exhaustion or anxiety levels can be intensively high, so the person may need to rest and step away from the constant merry-go-round that we all live on in our lives at times, or sometimes. Misconception or misunderstanding of autism in the general society's view can also affect those who live with it. Extreme sensitivity to noise, people, overload issues can and are challenging to those who live with the condition, as well as social, communication, behavioural deficits, which then in turn come down to their comprehensive or imagination impairment and knowing about boundaries towards others that they may come into their lives, short or long-term periods. Lack of employment opportunities can have a profound effect on someone's mental health, despite them going for the many positions they go for. The inability or ability to participate in society in a voluntary capacity, only to find out they're suffering from mental health issues due to the lack of exposure in society. What all boils down to their lack of being independent or having those independent living skills taught by their parents or peers may also play havoc for the individual in the long run. Many people are affected differently in different ways by their lives, their mental health issues, and the way they conduct themselves in front of others. Drugs and alcohol can also play a major part in someone's life, as well as smoking or eating or even vaping, gambling, or the foods we eat and drink in our daily lives. For example, eating takeaway constantly or suffering medical issues, which I'll explain a little bit further on. Trauma can be caused by all sorts of situations in life, such as the deaths of a friend or family member that you were so close to, bullying or discrimination in a workplace, physical, verbal, or emotional abuse, including blackmail, just to name a few. For me, I can't stand doing repetitive, mundane work for an organisation. I get very easily bored doing the same thing all day, every day. It also wears my brain out really quickly if I do this. For example, data entry all the time. Changes in my normal routine upsets me big time. If someone challenges me on something and I have to fight them for it, or to make it right again, and some instances this can't be done, sometimes it can. Dealing with your own emergency medical issues can bring on trauma and stress on our bodies that we don't need in our lives. For example, someone who may have irritable bowel syndrome or chronic fibromyalgia and the pain that that causes both on your brain and your body, or having constipation or having diarrhea and not having the ability to go out anywhere and enjoy your life. And being bloated is another way of having a mental health issue, and you want to have it fixed so you don't get bloated again. Having a one-sided family member with a serious medical issue that you've got to travel far out of your way for from your home base and be available for them for a period of time till that's over and done with. They may have undiagnosed autism. They're rude, very selfish, don't know how to behave in boundaries, and they've never learned to give back your ways of appreciation. How to give back to you ways of appreciation, but they still love you, but want you to spend so much money and time on them to get them what they need, e.g. groceries or medications, so much so till then you're so much out of pocket for your own budget and expenses till the very next payday. Sometimes this can play havoc on you because you don't have any money to go anywhere or do anything that you need to. Recovery and positivity. Turn those negative situations into positive ones if you can. Process it, live it, in that moment for a while, ride the wave, then you know from your own gut intuition, eliminate it and close it off. Close the door and move on from that cycle in your life if you can do so or have that ability to do so. Strategies that I use for my own mental health. I continuously prayed about things that were affecting me to God. I'm a devout Christian, and my faith in Jesus has been right throughout my whole life. Jesus is the only way through to God, as it says in John 14:6. If you don't read the Bible, then I encourage you to do so. So John 14:6 says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. And if we don't follow Jesus, then God will in then turn away from you on the last day of Earth when he returns. But other strategies that I use for my mental health. Visiting a beach also washes away the issues that are affecting me. Doing a long distance drive is always a good thing for me, as I like to see different places. Visiting my friends and snuggling up to and cuddling their cats, but their loud purring melts me all the time, no end. Going for a walk in the sunshine is by far the best medicine for me when overcoming mental health issues. Or just a physical walk and just being out in the fresh air makes a world of difference, a significant difference to me. So, in conclusion, we've now learned how autism can now impact our mental health in many ways, including living in the past and not moving on from that. What are you able to do to research for your member, son, daughter, or friend that has autism and mental health issues so that you can help them overcome this for themselves? Here are my contact details. You can get me on WhatsApp if you'd like to ask me more questions. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.